Good morning, y'all. Let's talk about college decisions, kind of my college decision process, how I ended up at K-State, and just some bits and pieces of advice I have for you guys while we get ready. Obviously, I'm now ready, but it's going to go back to what I filmed before. I made myself an instant espresso, which probably is not the best decision because I definitely put too much in here, but this is my little drink. Let's get ready with me. First, I'm going to put my hair back. I am going to look like an egg, but that's okay because, honestly, I don't need makeup in my face. But we're going to start with some moisturizer. I don't use anything fancy, it's just Neutrogena. But college decisions, honestly, were the most, stressful time in my life while I was in high school. I started off high school not necessarily knowing what I wanted to do. If I remember correctly, I really wanted to go into law my freshman year of high school. I think that's what I thought I'd end up doing. I currently am not have any plans to go to law school. So, that tells you how fast things switch up. I don't know what it does, but I know I never had a dream school while in high school. I just knew I didn't want to stay in state. That's kind of where I was with college decisions. I just did not want to stay in the state of California because I wanted to do something in ag. And I had seen the schools for ag and CA and I didn't really like them, if that makes sense. But now we're going to move on to, we're going to do lip balm. Since moving to the Midwest, my lips, I swear, I can not get enough lip balm on them. It's it's freezing for one, but my lips just soak up all lip balm, which is really fun because they did not do that back home. This is the e.l.f. Brow Gel. But going to senior year, I didn't necessarily know exactly what I wanted to do in ag. I knew I did not like ag science. I wasn't the biggest fan of the science part of agriculture. So I thought maybe I could be in education. So originally when I was applying for schools, I applied for 4 schools, okay? I applied for University of Idaho in Moscow, Texas A&M in College Station, Oklahoma State in Stillwater, and then obviously K-State in Manhattan. So those were the 4 schools that I applied to. And I didn't have a favorite out of them at first. When I first got accepted to Idaho, I thought that was my favorite. I quickly realized that it was going to be really cold. And if I remember correctly, when I first applied to Idaho, I was an ag ed major, which I think by October of my senior year, I realized I did not want to do ag ed. I didn't think it'd be very good for me. So I switched all my majors before I even got to school to ag communications. And so the only school that was not ag comm was Oklahoma. That was agriculture law because that is a unique major that they have at OSU that I really, really liked. And so I switched to ag law at OSU, and every other school was ag comm. I'm going to turn this pink light off. We're going to keep the pink light on. But those were my majors when I was applying. So obviously I applied to 4 schools, not a single CA school. What made me kind of narrow it down was when I decided I wanted to do ag communications, I realized that I wanted a completely ag comm program. That was not ag science and ag comm. That was just completely agriculture communications. This is the Ulta Beauty color corrector for under my eyes. And so when I realized that, Idaho had a very good ag comm program, but theirs was ag science and ag comm, if I remember correctly, and I decided that probably wasn't the best fit for me. So I decided to reject my admission, if I remember correctly. So I rejected my admission from University of Idaho. That made me very sad. And so then I had 3 schools left, and that was A&M, OSU and KSU. And so it was now time to tour. Fun fact, I ended up not getting into A&M, which some would be like, that's so sad. I didn't like it when I toured. I really did not like A&M when I toured. So, but we're skipping parts. I got into OSU when I was in a haunted maze. I got into KSU when I was at school. And I think A&M, I found out I didn't get in also at school for some reason. Why I was at school when that came out, I don't know. But that's just what happened for me. Everyone's kind of going to find out at different times. But anyway, so in December, I went and toured all 3 schools. Me and my dad drove out. I toured KSU first because that was just the path we decided to kind of go. We went KSU, OSU, and then A&M. I got on KSU campus and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't like it here. I'm not the biggest fan of it. And that was like my first impression of the campus, which obviously now that I'm like actually walking it, I feel like that makes a huge difference. Because when we toured, it wasn't like an official tour. I just walked around and kind of went off of how I felt walking around, which I do not recommend. If you guys are able to come tour, no matter if your school's KSU or not KSU, go tour it, because I feel like that made a huge difference on my opinion, and it probably shouldn't have, because it wasn't. I was really just looking on the outside building, like the outside of the buildings, and I wasn't going inside anything or seeing like what the school really looked like. So I definitely recommend, if you can tour, even if they are out of state. There are so many programs that make it inexpensive to come and tour your out of state school. So I toured KSU, wasn't the really biggest fan of it, was absolutely terrified that I didn't like it. I met my roommate, and I was really sad because I really clicked with my roommate, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't like it here, I'm terrified. Well, I go tour OSU. When I say tour, we drove around, looked at things. I loved Oklahoma. When I left Oklahoma's campus, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be here next year. And obviously I'm not, but I loved the campus. It was so clean. Stillwater is gorgeous. I loved it. It was near my grandparents, so there was a lot of pros going to OSU. But sadly, the financial aid was not one of them. I think they don't, at least compared to KSU, OSU does not give out as much financial aid as I would have needed to make it worth going out of state for them. So I toured A&M. I realized I did not like it, so that was automatically cut from the list. And then I had about 2 weeks to choose, because housing opened for OSU and housing opened for K-State, and my deposit was due for whichever one I chose. And so I sat on that choice for a long time. I didn't really know how to choose, what to do. Do I follow the money, which would have been K-State? Do I follow what I think my heart is saying, which is OSU? Like, what do you do when you have 2 schools that perfectly, like, would be amazing for you? Well, what I ended up doing was making a pros and cons list, which school had the best program, which school was the most receptive to communication. What I mean by that is who responded the fastest, whose admin did I like meeting the most, and all that. And after a couple things, I decided that K-State probably was the best option out of the 2. And so I paid my enrollment deposit for K-State. And at the time, I didn't necessarily know how I was paying for college. I do now, obviously, which is going to be probably, I don't know if that video will come out before this one does, or after I haven't fully, like, decided what my plan is with that video, but you guys will see what I'm talking about. But I didn't really know how K-State would get paid for. It's now paid for, which I'm so grateful for, because now looking back, I never would have been able to afford OSU, and I think that's a big part of college decisions nowadays is, can you afford it? I'm not always going to say follow the money, but I do think following the money in a lot of situations is the best choice. um, especially when you have two schools that both of their degrees are heavily weighted. Now, what I mean by that is if I got a AgCom degree from OSU, I was going to be really good off, and if I got an AgCom degree from K-State, I'd also be very well set because of my degree. So for me, the programs were very similar. They were both very active in ACT, Ag Communicators of Tomorrow. They both had very similar opportunities. I just happened to have more financial aid here, and then on top of that, I liked the admin I met a lot more. They were a lot nicer, if that makes sense, and they were a lot more receptive to communication. So they responded faster. They were a lot more happy for me to come here. It very much felt, when deciding between the schools, OSU was like, come if you want, and KC was like, we want you here, come to our school. And so I ended up choosing, obviously, K-State. And so I paid my deposit in January, if I remember correctly, and then I picked my dorm, Haymaker, in April, which was absolutely crazy to me because I felt like everything was moving so fast. I remember like having so much anxiety coming to K-State because at the time, like, I hadn't toured it since I toured it in December. So I was really scared that I would come here and absolutely hate it again, and then I would be kind of stuck here for a year because I didn't want to transfer one semester in. I didn't want to go home. Obviously, I could have, but I just didn't want to kind of give up, and I was absolutely terrified because as I was moving to K-State, my entire For You page, like the entire For You page on my TikTok, was people transferring to Oklahoma. And that scared me to death because I was like terrified that I was going to have to transfer, and then filled out the transfer portal. And then I rushed here, and I didn't get picked, obviously, or I didn't get bid, and then that really did not help either. I again was absolutely terrified that I was going to have to transfer, and I started looking into the process and how that would all work. And then I kind of had a wake-up moment. I started really liking my classes. I really liked the friends that I made, which I never would have made if I hadn't come here. And so I ended up falling in love with K-State after a little bit. And I think that's a huge thing that, like, a lot of people don't realize is it's a lot easier to fall in love with a college campus than it is to go into debt for one. That's just my personal opinion. Like, if you have the opportunity, go to the school that you can afford. Again, every person is different. That is just kind of what I did, and I don't regret it, if that makes sense. But right now, looking back, I don't think I would have fit into Oklahoma as much. They're very southern. I'm very much a California girl, and so I don't think I would have fit in as much as I do here. There are a lot of opportunities I've gotten here. Obviously, I know I didn't get picked for Rush, but that was a thing I don't think I would have done at Oklahoma. Another thing is, I did not have a roommate set up at Oklahoma. I had no clue how the roommate process was going to work there compared to K-State, and so I did not have a roommate at OSU. And that also had a huge weight in my decision because coming here, I would be living with my friend. I would have a double dorm, a two-person dorm, communal. Compared to OSU, I was going to have to be doing a single because that was almost all they had left. They were basically out of a lot of things by the time I would have been able to pick them and apply for housing. And for me, there just wasn't, I didn't see in my first year of college living in a single. I wanted a lot of friends and all that. But to kind of wrap up this video, because my makeup's almost basically done, choosing your college is not the end-all be-all. And you can switch, you can change majors, you can change basically anything. Hell, you can change your major before you even get to school. So don't worry what you apply to your school in. And nothing hurts taking a break year. I have a ton of friends who took gap years, who work and are actively going to go back for their education. So there's nothing bad about doing that if that is what fits your needs at the time. Obviously, I chose a 4-year, but I was very privileged to be able to do that. I'm paying 100% of my entire college tuition. I'm paying for my housing, I'm paying for my tuition, I am paying for my living expenses, and I know I am very privileged to be able to do that. I know not everyone else is in that same situation. So if you have the option to go to your dream school, I always recommend taking it, but also look at what is going to get you the most job outlook, because we're not just going to college to get a degree, we're going to college to hopefully get a job. So go with what your heart says, but also if one is initially better financial aid, follow that as well. Obviously, there's a lot more like nuances in the college decision process, acceptances, rejections, and how that all goes. I am very sad I never recorded any of my like college process, because looking back, I wish I had. But obviously, you guys can always transfer. That's always an option. But if you get the option, choose KSU. I'm always going to say that. I'm so grateful that I am here, and I'm so grateful I made this choice. Go Cats. And that is the end of this video.